And in the southeast, like I said, markedly hotter than yesterday. Highs of around 35 Celsius. Could be the 7th day this year where somewhere in the UK exceeds 35. Into the evening, and it's generally dry across northern parts of Scotland. A few outbreaks of rain here and there, maybe even some glimmers of sunshine, but generally quite cloudy. Wetter across central and eastern areas. A band of rain, which could be a bit heavy at times, continues through the evening and the start of the night. Northern Ireland will see most of the rain having cleared through, so a drier end to the day here. And across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a fine end to the day as well. The clearer skies towards the southeast. A lot of the rain across Scotland will clear away as we go overnight, but there is some further rain set to come in from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Outbreaks of rain mainly across western parts of Scotland, a bit further south as well. Fresher air in the north means temperatures here could drop to single figures in some prone spots, but further south it's another warm night to come. Temperatures holding up in mid to high teens Celsius. More showery rain across northern parts in particular through tomorrow. Some of this turning heavy, even thundery, especially across northern parts of Scotland through the day. Watch out for some higher rainfall totals building up here. Further south, apart from a few showers perhaps around some southern coastal parts, it is going to be dry, but not as hot as it has been today. Temperatures peaking around 28 Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. There is a collision on the M3 westbound at junction 11 in Winchester South. On the M1 southbound in Luton, a lane is closed between junctions 15 and 14 for emergency repairs. In Scotland, the M74 northbound has lane restrictions between junctions 1A and 2, causing queues. Across Wales, the A40 from Pensarn West to Abergwili is affected by a collision. And on the trains, cross-country services are disrupted between Exeter St David's and Paignton, and between Totnes and Plymouth. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:30 on Wednesday, the 29th of July. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Will there be a social care tax? Brits face a hit on their wages to fund support in later life. Andy Burnham will set out the details this morning.
I'm not going to do what Westminster has traditionally done, which is to kick the can down the road on this important issue.
Surging across the UK, France and Spain, with more scorching weather on the way today.
As the UK is braced for the fourth heat wave this year, there's concerns about wildfires spreading. We're here on the North York Moors in North Yorkshire, and we'll be speaking to landowners about the impact of Labour's ban on controlled burning.
And yet you won't apologise because you're blaming Nigel Farage for amplifying it.
I think we also need to talk about a double standard.
No, you keep taking the conversation on.
Well, the Green Party leader Zach Polanski admits a mistake for sharing a guillotine image of Nigel Farage, but he refuses to say sorry.
So I'm on a beach in northern France, just south of Boulogne-sur-Mer, and I've been tracking a group of illegal immigrants, and you can see they're currently walking along the beach behind me.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has walked alongside illegal migrants headed for a small boat earlier. French authorities did nothing to stop them, and we have a major small boats breaking exclusive coming up very shortly.
And an HMO takeover. Residents in Nottingham have told GB News that they're worried about the amount of houses in multiple occupation in their area.
Community has changed so much. It's unrecognisable.
There's got to be something where you can only have so many in a certain distance.
There is not a need in 100 yards for 6 HMOs.
Has there been an own goal for FIFA? European nations have threatened to boycott the World Cup as Gianni Infantino's sell-off plan sparks outrage across the globe. Great to have your company this morning. In a short moment, we're crossing over to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who has got some breaking exclusive news from the north coast of France this morning. Many of you might have been thinking that Chris Philp was sort of becoming our new roving correspondent on the small boats crisis. He's spending recess in the Channel and off the north coast of France. But no, our man Mark White, of course, with all the latest key detail. That's coming your way very shortly.
Yeah, extraordinary footage from Chris Philp there. He was on the beach of Boulogne-sur-Mer. I had a school trip there when I was 11. I'll tell you, it didn't look like that. It was a very safe place for English school children to go. Northern France has changed a lot in recent years.
Absolutely. Also, so much to discuss with the social care plans being mooted today. What do you make of that? Are you a carer? Please do get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. It is such a thorny political issue, and one, frankly, like so many other key problems, that has been pushed to the side for decades. We've never really adapted to our changing population. We're all getting older, aren't we? And that's an issue that's going to be tackled, or at least discussed today.
And it's going to be expensive, whatever the outcome, but could be a cross-party affair for the first time ever. Before we get stuck into all that, here's your news update with Sam Francis.
Thank you both. Very good morning to you. Just after 9:30, the headlines this hour. Andy Burnham is promising to put everything he's got into fixing adult social care, one of the biggest challenges facing his new government. The Prime Minister has invited Kemi Badenoch and Sir Ed Davey to work with him on reform, saying the issue has been avoided for far too long. A major review is already underway into how social care should work, what people should pay, and what role the state should play. The UK is on wildfire alert this morning after more than 200 fires were recorded in just 12 days. The warning comes during the fourth heat wave of the year so far, with amber heat health alerts in place for parts of England. The leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, has refused to apologise after he shared a social media post which Reform UK claimed was inciting the murder of its leader, Nigel Farage. In an interview, Mr Polanski admitted he made a mistake, but said an apology would be false. He's now taken down that post. Also this morning, Andy Burnham has claimed that football does not belong to investors as criticism grows over FIFA's plans for new private companies to run the World Cup and other competitions. The Prime Minister says the World Cup is not a product and was never anyone's to sell. More than 33 million illegal cigarettes have been seized from local shops and high streets in a major crackdown on illicit tobacco. Trading Standards says the trade is often run through shops and vape stores, with organised criminal gangs using it to fund wider crime. Those are the latest headlines this half hour. A full roundup at 10.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. We have some breaking news for you this morning. People smugglers have launched a coordinated wave of small boats from multiple points along the French coast.
Well, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now. Mark, bring us all the details.
Well, one maritime security expert has told me this is nothing short of a full frontal assault from people smugglers frustrated at growing levels of police activity in the north around the ports of Calais and Dunkirk, their normal launching points, which of course has forced them to launch much further south. Well, today they've switched their tactics again, and it is a surge of multiple launches right down the coast from Dunkirk in the north all the way down 100 miles south of Dunkirk to Dieppe. We've counted so far 10 to 11 small boat launches. As we speak, more than 300 have already been brought to the UK, with about 400 at least still in French waters. So 700 small boat migrants that have been pushed into the English Channel for that illegal journey across to the UK. And such was the chaotic scenes that one particular incident involving, of course, what we called a taxi boat. These are boats that launch and then go up the coast and pick up migrants from the beaches. It was so overloaded with more than 80 people on board that a number of people fell off this vessel. It was at Wimereux, which is between Calais and Boulogne-sur-Mer. There was a full-scale rescue operation that plucked a number of people from the sea, firefighters going into the sea to rescue those that included, we're told, a pregnant woman and children. That's unusual, of course, for there to be that many women and children. We know the vast majority on these small boats are men, but they do sprinkle effectively. It's a cynical tactic, but this is what they do. A number of women and children, knowing that they get a quicker response from the rescue services when they get to UK waters. But what often happens, and we've seen it before, is that the women and children are the weakest among those clambering on board the vessel, and they often get knocked off. And that's what's happened here. 8 people rescued and taken to hospital. But as I say, a very significant surge of migrants across the English Channel today in a switch of tactics again. This is coming less than 24 hours after we saw the launch from the furthest ever point down the French coast from a port called Fécamp, which is about 40 miles further south than Dieppe, which had been the previous furthest launched point. That was a proof of concept launch to see whether they could launch boats that far south and head north up towards Eastbourne. Well, it worked. It worked, so they're going to continue doing that. But today, as I say, 700 small boat migrants crossing the English Channel heading to the UK.
Thank you very much for that update, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, with that breaking exclusive news. Miriam, 300 already in British waters, 400 on the way. Yesterday, Andy Burnham said that the policies he had inherited on the small boat migrant crisis, I've got to stop saying small boat, a lot of them are very big, 165 on one last week. He said that he'd inherited them, it was working. Do you agree? gbnews.com/you'll say. I suspect you do not. something's got to change here.
Has an extraordinary the level of coordination that's going on with these gangs, deliberate attempts to frustrate the French police. Well, we'll bring you more on that as we have it. Moving on now, the Prime Minister says he wants to put politics aside to fix Britain's broken social care system, with plans for a new tax on workers now being considered to help pay for it.
But while the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats have been invited to Downing Street for crisis talks, Nigel Farage and Reform UK have been shut out.
Well, Charlie, this is an enormous crisis to fix. Successive governments have talked about it. It cost Theresa May the general election in 2017, her plan to bring in a new way of paying for it using property value. It's a difficult problem to solve. Do you hold out much hope?
Well, not really. It depends, I suppose, on what these political talks will produce. Stating the obvious, isn't it? But there's a concern at the same time about not including all voices, not including all perspectives. Dementia is a key area in this, of course, Miriam, and it's an area that the public has shied away from. We don't want to have that difficult discussion about dealing with dementia, and of course there are so many other issues that are being cared for within the social care system. But I think the problem is that one of the reasons why it's not being dealt with is because of taboo.
Yeah.
People don't want to face these crises, and then before you get into the tricky discussion of cost and responsibility. What do you think, Miriam? I know, Miriam, you're more socially conservative than most in the country, perhaps, and you probably have very strong views on children looking after their parents, returning the favour of what parents did for children when they're in their younger years. Is that something that should be happening?
Well, potentially, but obviously our demography has changed so much. People used to have lots of children, and they used to have children earlier in life. So by the time you got to the age where you might need care, there are lots of people around you, children, grandchildren, nephews and nieces. That isn't the case anymore, and it's just not possible for one or two adult children to care for somebody with dementia. It's too big a task. But also, people used to die a lot younger, 65 maybe from a heart attack, whereas people are living longer but less healthier. So we do need more care towards the end of life. And I think a lot of people think it is free, which means that any government that tries to say we're going to have to find a way of paying for it risks an enormous backlash, because people, of course, don't want to pay more tax. So there are many, many issues that make it really, really hard to solve, but we're going to have to try. And other countries do have better solutions than we do, so there perhaps are some ideas out there.
Well, this next guest is someone you know, so why don't you introduce them?
Yes, Dan Archer, who used to be a constituent of mine when I was a Member of Parliament. He is the CEO of Visiting Angels, which is a care agency based in Sheffield. Dan, good morning. Thank you for coming on Britain's Newsroom, and it's great to see you again. You're on the coalface of the problems in the care sector. What do you think the government should be doing?
Well, I mean, I think the government needs to start with a full engagement with everybody in every political party about ensuring that this problem is addressed. You know, it cannot be a political ball that gets kicked around at all. So I think there's been a step in the right direction by Andy Burnham by encouraging a cross-party talk, but he does need to make sure that every party is involved in that discussion. I think that you hit the nail on the head, Miriam, when you said that part of the challenge here is that people assume that social care is free at the point of use because they get very used to the fact that the NHS is free at the point of use. And the reality is that the social care system is not and has never been free at the point of use. It's paid for by a complex kind of cross group of organisations. It's either paid for by a local authority, it's paid for by the NHS, or it's paid for by private individuals. And in many instances, it's also paid for by subsidies that come from private payers who are overpaying for their care, or by family carers who are not getting paid at all. So I think in order to really fix this, there needs to be an open discussion about where that baseline actually sits in order to ensure that it's funded correctly. And Andy Burnham's made a very good point about devoting, I think he said he'd devote the full extent of his political capital to this. He actually also needs to devote some financial capital to this. But I don't think necessarily it needs to be new money. I mean, I think, we've got a case in South Yorkshire, a gentleman that we're supporting, where the support that we are providing to him is saving the NHS £100,000 a year. Now, I've said to the commissioners in that area, if they want to send me 10 cases, I'll very happily save the NHS £1 million a year. It's possible for this to be done, but we need to be thinking about that money differently, and not new money, but the redeployment of other money is probably the right way to be thinking about it.
And Dan, we've been hearing about some 13,600 people stuck in hospital beds who don't need to be there. They're medically fit to leave, but there isn't that space for care after them. Do you get the sense that there could be a case where some of this investment essentially pays for itself by virtue of the healthcare costs and the bed blocking being relieved?
Absolutely the case, and whether it's 13,000 or 16,000 people in a hospital corridor waiting to go home, the reality of this is that in many areas the process of re-enablement of paying for social care when they go home after a hospital stay is automatically funded, and what happens then is that after a 6-week period of it being automatically funded, many individuals then don't qualify for ongoing funding, so they end up having to pay privately for that. Well, it would make far more sense for me in that situation for people to be paying for that from the very beginning and to be saving that NHS money to be used elsewhere within the NHS. So, yeah, the fact, though, that they stay in a hospital bed, I mean, hospital beds are a horribly expensive place for people to be staying. But what we see here is that there is a different budget use because it's a different funding stream for an NHS hospital bed compared to social care within the community. And that, again, is part of the challenge we've got. I think very often when you talk to families in this area, they will talk about the complexity of navigating the system. Well, the fact that any navigation at all is required is part of the problem. There shouldn't be navigation. It should be pretty straightforward, this stuff.
Well, Dan Archer, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us this morning. That's Dan Archer, who's the CEO of Visiting Angels in Sheffield. Yeah, lots of other things that could be done first, Charlie, to make the system more efficient without necessarily ploughing in new money. Some good ideas there.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it is 10:15 and still ahead here on Britain's Newsroom. You cannot miss this exclusive report from our reporter Jack Carston about people in Nottingham living in fear over the explosion of HMOs in their village.
Well, coming up next, farmers are worried that the scorching heat wave leaves them vulnerable to wildfires. We'll be speaking to some in just a moment.
This is Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The heat wave that's leading to some exceptional temperatures and wildfires across parts of France and Spain, Portugal at the moment, that is continuing, but we're seeing the peak of the heat across France today, and then some of that hot air is pushing further eastwards. For Spain, Portugal, however, the hot weather continues into tomorrow. Further east and for Italy, even towards parts of Greece, temperatures in the high 30s, low 40s, with plenty of sunshine to come as we head into the weekend. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Charlie, as most of the viewers know, I would be involved in agriculture. This isn't quite agriculture. It's quite close to it, the cousins of. A lot of things that go on in agriculture are on display here. Thousands of people coming to this site, Ragley Hall, just about 45 minutes out of Birmingham.
We are the modern ruralists, and here today we have the craft yard. We've got 9 different crafts, all demonstrating what they're up to. Here we have the wheelwrights, and they're bonding a wheel here. So this is an ancient craft that's been going for about. Barney Murray's a bit of a legend, quite frankly. He's the national champion, master dry stone waller, comes from North Wales, and he's a bit of a Thor lookalike. So he's quite popular.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, at 16 minutes past 8, the annual bike ride from Yorkshire to London is taking place today, aiming to honour the legacy of the Batley and Spen Labour MP Joe Cox, who was murdered by a far-right terrorist in June of 2016.
Well, the bike ride aims to champion a cause she was passionate about, as this year marks the 10th anniversary of her tragic death.
Kim, if we can just start with you, what is your sister's legacy?
Well, there's so much that we've got to be proud of that's been done in Joe's name. It's just been 10 years since she was murdered, and what has kept us going as a family has been the way that so many amazing people, including people like this amazing man, have done things in Joe's name to show what our country is really about. And you've got all these amazing people today from all different backgrounds, all walks of life, celebrating the things that we have in common, not agreeing on everything.
GB News, the People's Channel. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
It's a difficult question. Honestly, I don't think I would at this rate, because I think the government tracks, when we say we're fighting for Britain, what are we actually fighting for? The concept of Britain, I don't think exists anymore. When I look at Britain, when I go outside, it doesn't seem to be very British. And I think the core demographic of the people who would normally fight, these white working class boys who, you know, have been fighting for Britain, who we expect just to sacrifice their life in a fight, you know, they've been demonised for decades and decades by the government, by our education system, by the media. Economically, they've been disadvantaged. So why would we expect them to risk their lives when we've demonised them for so long and took them for granted for so long? And this concept of Britain fighting for the British government, you know, the British government has betrayed us.
GBNews, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's 10 to 10. You're watching GB News.
Now, firefighters are continuing to battle major wildfires in France and Spain.
Yes, around 360,000 people have been evacuated across those countries, with the blaze in Spain described as the largest wildfire ever recorded.
Well, in Britain, amber health alerts have been issued as temperatures will be hitting the mid-30s this week, and farmers are concerned about the risk of wildfires.
Well, GB News Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley is in North Yorkshire. Anna, good morning. What are the big concerns for farmers in the region?
Good morning. Well, yes, you join us here on the North York Moors. We're near Huttonley Hole in North Yorkshire, and you can just see some of the dry heather in front of us here. Of course, the concerns are that if the temperatures rise, the heat sparks, if walkers are around, potential campers, people with fires, barbecues, this could really ignite, and that's why they want to do controlled burning. We're joined now by George Windali. You're a landowner here, George. Just tell us what controlled burning is and the impact of banning it.
Controlled burning is done during the winter to get rid of all this high fuel load vegetation here that's tinder dry, and to get it to regenerate, and it's done in the winter so that it's done nice and cool, and the soil is wet, and the moss, this important moss, sphagnum moss underneath, is unharmed. We can burn the top off without harming the moss or burning the peat underneath. This huge carbon store is really important for us to preserve, and all the dormant seed layer in it that is going to regenerate after that, and it also grows back from the root. As well. It's a natural process that has taken place over millennia, and is a practice that is very valuable for preserving important habitats like this for wildlife.
But stopping it, just tell us about the impact of the wildfires that we had near here last year, and just how it can, you know, spark out of control.
Yeah, so if we've got too much fuel load and then we get into the drought conditions that we've got now, and a spark is introduced to it, it will burn with such intensity and ferocity that it's impossible for fire rescue services or land managers to control it. And it will spread, and it will, because it's burning with so much heat, it also burns down, it kills that moss, and it kills and gets into the peat and burns the peat and the carbon store underneath. That is a disaster we have to avoid. So we mustn't spark disaster by introducing fuel sparks at this time of year. Make sure those cigarettes are extinguished. Make sure that you don't bring a barbecue in here or light a fire or a campfire. But during at this time of year, that's really the only thing that we can hope to achieve. But we prepare for it all through the winter by getting this fuel load down into a nice patchwork quilt of uneven age stands. Provides nice thick areas where stuff can nest, but surrounded by short areas.
Thank you, George. Sorry, just got to cut you off there, but really sound advice from George there, just about stopping wildfires and being impactful when you're walking around areas like this one as well.
Thank you so much, Anna Riley, for that report.
Well, Jake Swindles is the Director for Scotland at the Countryside Alliance. He joins us now. Jake, good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. This is a really important issue, isn't it? Until 2021, farmers could burn heather as they saw fit to try to reduce the risk of wildfires. But since then, there have been major restrictions. What's been the implication of those?
It's a really key issue, to be quite honest. analyst. And firstly, can I just make sure that I thank, on behalf of our sector and communities, all the people that turn out to fight these fires. First of all, this affects more than just farmers. It affects communities, it affects landowners, it affects local businesses, and it really stretches them to their absolute limits. Wildfires can be prevented, and when wildfires rip out of control, they can be stopped much more easily. But the legislation that the government is pushing through, the extension of the ban in the case in England and Wales, and the legislation in Scotland where licensing is now mandatory for muir burn, really ties the hands of landowners. You know, these guards have been managing the land for decades, and it's been done in this way for hundreds of years for a reason. It's a time-tested method, and to tie the hands of the people who are managing the land results in huge wildfires. Now, we're on a major wildfire in the Cairngorms at the minute. As we speak, we had a major one in Scotland last year. Last year in the UK, it was the worst year on record for wildfires in the UK, and we're already on our third heat wave this year in the UK. So there's no end to it. We need help, not restrictions.
Jake, just very quickly, you're speaking about the decades of knowledge, hundreds of years of these practices being conducted. Do you think there's a problem with policymakers not coming from those backgrounds and fewer people involved in these areas having that legacy of understanding?
Absolutely. There is a clear misunderstanding. And not only a misunderstanding, there's a lack of experience. You know, the policymakers need to be coming out onto the ground and meeting the landowners, meeting the land managers who do this. There was a very simple experiment done by a gamekeeper in Scotland where he placed a chocolate bar on the ground and he burned the vegetation over the chocolate bar and picked it up, and the chocolate had not melted. Now, many from the left, some organisations, charities, rural charities, will say that burning releases carbon from peat jets.
Jake, I'm so sorry. We are going to have to cut in very sadly. We have reached the top of the hour, but thank you so much for coming on Britain's Newsroom this morning. I'm sure lots of our viewers will have a lot of sympathy for those farmers.
We've got a statement from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. They said the government continues to strengthen our approach to resilience, including improving cross-government coordination on the full wildfire cycle. We're also investing in measures designed to improve resilience, landscape-scale habitat recovery and stronger protections for upland peat. Right, all that and loads more to come in the next hour. See you shortly.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There is a collision on the M25 anti-clockwise at junction 14 in Heathrow. The A1 between junctions 3 and 4 is closed. The M1 northbound between junctions 15A and 16 in Northampton has a lane closed. The A11 is closed after the A134 in Thetford. In Scotland, the M77 northbound at junction 2 on the slip roads has 2 lanes restricted, causing queues. Across Wales, the A40 from Pensarn West to Abergwili is affected by a collision. And on the trains, cross-country services are disrupted between Exeter, St David's and Paignton, with East Midlands Railway running a reduced service. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's a great British giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Wednesday the 29th of July. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Well, any moment now, the Prime Minister will set out his plan to reform the social care system.
I'm not going to do what Westminster has traditionally done, which is to kick the can down the road on this important issue.
Some breaking news this morning. People smugglers have launched a full frontal assault across a wide stretch of the French coast, pushing at least 700 out into the English Channel.
And there's a blazing heat wave risk. Wildfires are surging across the United Kingdom, France and Spain, with more scorching weather on the way today.
And yet you won't apologise because you're blaming Nigel Farage for amplifying it.
I think we also need to talk about a double standard.
No, you keep taking the conversation on.
Well, the Green Party leader Zach Polanski admits a mistake for sharing a guillotine image of Nigel Farage, but he refuses to say sorry.
The HMO takeover. Residents in Nottingham have told GB News they're worried about the number of houses in multiple occupation in their area.
Community has changed so much. It's unrecognisable.
There's got to be something where you can only have so many in a certain distance.
There is not a need in 100 yards for 6 HMOs.
Andy Burnham there, Miriam, said, I'm not going to do what Westminster has always done on social care. I won't just kick the can down the road. What's he going to do about the full frontal assault being launched from the northern coast of France across an enormous stretch, 700 migrants coming towards the United Kingdom this morning? What different approach will he take, or will he continue to kick the can down the road?
Well, one of the tactics the current Labour government, or the previous Labour administration, I suppose, under Keir Starmer, has relied upon is the French, giving millions and millions of pounds to the French to stop these boats. Well, they've had some impact, so much so that the migrants are now coordinating their attacks to make sure they evade them. So I think that option's run out of road as well.
Yes, and we're going to be discussing the impact of this crisis today with that Jack Carson exclusive report in Nottinghamshire dealing with the HMO crisis. This has been a major surge. The government has seen the issue that people have about hotels and believe that that's the problem, not the people in them being dispersed into the wider community. They've totally misunderstood what people are so angry about. And that's the right word, isn't it? Anger.
Yeah.
You can see the frustration in some of those voices that Jack has been speaking to.
And there's also a link between mass immigration, whether that's legal or illegal, and the top story today, which is social care reform. Because one of the problems in the social care system is that care workers are paid too little money, so they don't stay in the job. Why are they paid too little money? Because so many people have come from abroad willing to do that job for less, often moving into other occupations, but keeping the wages low. Mass immigration has changed almost about our politics. It's a very, very far-reaching problem.
Well, that's quite impressive from us, I say, tying 3 stories into one discussion. But we want to hear your perspective, please. gbnews.com/you're-safe for your reaction and your input on all of the issues we're discussing today.
But first, here's your news with Sam Francis.
Thank you both, and a very good morning to you. Just gone 3 minutes past 10. The top story, Andy Burnham has said he will put everything he has got into fixing adult social care as he invites party leaders to work with him on reform. The Prime Minister says that the system has been ignored for too long, leaving families paying the price and the NHS under strain. He's invited Kemi Badenoch and Sir Ed Davey to talks, although the Conservatives say the invitation came at short notice and have questioned how reforms would be funded. Mr Burnham says the time for playing politics, though, is over and that Britain must finally build a care system giving people dignity, security and support. And we are, as Charlie and Miriam mentioned, expecting to hear from Andy Burnham in the next few minutes here on GB News. The Football Association says it is deeply concerned about the lack of process and governance around FIFA's plans to set up a private company to run its competitions. FIFA wants to create a new body bringing together commercial rights and the running of tournaments, with private investors able to take part. UEFA has already condemned the plan, saying the soul and governance of football are not assets to trade. And Andy Burnham, a lifelong Everton supporter, has now engaged in the debate, saying that football belongs to fans and that selling any part of the World Cup means selling out. Breaking this morning, people smugglers have launched a major surge across the French coast, pushing at least 700 migrants towards the English Channel. At least 10 boats have been launched since the early hours from Dunkirk in the north to Dieppe, around 100 miles further south. More than 300 migrants have already reached UK waters, at least 400 others still in French waters attempting to cross. A maritime security source has told GB News today that the gangs are using surge tactics to stretch French patrols. Now, if all those attempting to cross today reach UK waters, the number of migrants arriving since Andy Burnham entered number 10 would rise to more than 1,600. Well, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp joined us from a beach on the French coast live this morning and said that the scale of today's crossings show that the immigration system is, he says, totally broken.
Andy Burnham's claim yesterday this problem has been solved is clearly ridiculous. The reduced numbers are simply down to the weather. The sea in the Channel has been quite choppy so far this year. The only thing protecting our borders is essentially the wave height in the English Channel. It is not Shavana Mahmood's deal. And as you can see from the evidence surrounding me right now, Andy Burnham's claim this problem has been solved is complete nonsense.
The UK is on wildfire alert after more than 200 fires have been recorded in just the last 12 days. Fire chiefs say the hot, the dry weather has left parks, fields and moorland at risk of catching fire. The warning comes during the fourth heat wave of the year so far, with amber heat health alerts in place for much of England. The Met Office says any fires that break out in parts of London, the south east or eastern England could become exceptionally severe. People are being urged to take extra care, avoid disposable barbecues, put cigarettes out properly, take litter home and call 999 immediately if they see any signs of fire. And more than 33 million illegal cigarettes have been seized from local shops and high streets in a major crackdown on illicit tobacco. Trading Standards says the illegal trade is often run through shops and vape stores by organised criminal gangs. Penalties worth £3.5 million have been issued, but officials warn that that's only a fraction of the nearly £2 billion a year that illicit tobacco takes away from public services. Those are this morning's headlines. More news shortly. Now, though, it's back to Charlie and Miriam.
Thank you, Sam. Hello and welcome back. You're watching Britain's Newsroom live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Well, lots of you have been getting in touch on gbnews.com/your say. Lots of comments about social care reforms. Come on to that in a minute. But there's a comment here from Jack Den about the surge in small boat migrants that we've been reporting on today. Jack says Parliament must be recalled to do something radical to secure our borders. What this Labour government can't understand about the security issue and funding issue, and all they talk about is tax, tax, tax. And Harry says 700 migrants, £28 million. But don't worry, we now have number 10 North. And I think no one's pretending there aren't other problems in this country. But when you see those kind of pictures, that many people coming across, we don't know who they are, this is an emergency.
We talk about the social contract. It's collapsing if we can't deal with this. And if you're wanting to develop a high trust system where people want to work together and pay taxes to fund the support of each other, it's going to be hard to convince people that's the right thing to do, if especially if you're going to raise taxes for social care, if what's going on your screens right now continues to be a crisis. Miriam, I've got another thing I want to talk about. I've got a message actually on X, not on yours, from Ollie, who's had a go at us for apparently not reporting correctly, which is a nice way of starting a query to us. He says they're not natural wildfires, are they? And he's pointing out that hundreds of arsonists have been arrested as well. I do think it is a key element to discuss. In France, the ministers there have vowed no leniency on arsonists amid the raging wildfires that have been causing all this devastation, of course. We will be coming to that social care event shortly. We've seen 184 people have been arrested on suspicion of arson, according to the Interior Minister, Laurent Nunez. And guess what, Miriam? One of them was a volunteer firefighter.
Goodness me. Well, the French authorities... Yeah, well, the French authorities were saying yesterday that 90% of the wildfires, 9 in 10, had been started by human activity, whether that's deliberate or carelessness. Obviously, they've spread because of the weather. Absolutely, that's true. But yes, we should be reporting that.
You've probably heard a couple of voices in the wings here. I should say we are joined by the journalist and broadcaster Mike Parry and the former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Yeah, very
Obviously,
good.
we're seeing Yvette Cooper there speaking ahead of this major social care reform announcement coming up. Mike, what's your perspective of what you've seen touted so far?
You see, to me, social care is the problem that every successive Prime Minister has just blanked for the last 40 or 50 years. Now, when I first went to the University of the Trent, which was called Trent Polytechnic in those days, my mum and dad gave me a building society book, in which they'd be putting money for me since the day I was born, and I had the huge sum of about £132 or something like that, which is a lot of money in those days, to take off to university with me. Shouldn't that be something we should drill into families from this day? From the age of about 15, you should open an account, or not you, but your child should open an account, and you should tell that child, one of these days you're going to be old, so start looking after yourself now. And the other issue which I'd like to raise, which nobody else has, do you know how Norway funds social care? Because it's got a sovereign wealth fund of £1.3 trillion. And where has that sovereign wealth fund come from? The North Sea, which we are refusing to drill. Why don't we drill the North Sea?
Vote for Mike, folks. Vote for Mike.
So why on earth didn't Margaret Thatcher at the time in the 80s actually put that money in the sovereign wealth fund?
Because she sold them off.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is, what you've talked about is Gordon Brown's baby bonds. Gordon Brown introduced way back in about 2002 the idea of exactly what you've just described, an investment for children as they're born that then mature when they're 18, 19, 20, 21.
Yeah, and what happened to them?
Yeah, they're still there.
But these are nice ideas, and of course it's a good idea for people to save from an early age. But we have two problems that didn't exist before the 1970s. One is inflation, but the second is that longer life expectancy, whilst it's a really, really good thing in itself, people used to die on average when they were 65 in the 1940s after a short illness. Now people die in their 80s after long illnesses. That is an amount of care and money that people never had to think about when the welfare state was created.
We've got to change all our social trends. For instance,
it's going to cost.
I think most people should expect to work until they're 70 years of age. Why would anybody want 30 years at the end of their life doing nothing? I just don't understand it. You've got to change the whole social culture and get people to appreciate that when you're on Earth, you have to look after yourself for most of the time you're on Earth and not depend on somebody else to look after
getting on
it
to Miriam's point, when the NHS was formed on the same day as me in July 1948, it was predicated on two basic factors. One was that men worked until they were 65. Men worked until they were 65, died when they were 75. Women didn't work. Women stayed at home and looked after the elderly, the infirm people. And it wasn't 1952, 4 years after the NHS, a thing called the Gillibo Report, says financially it is absolutely unsustainable because men are living longer and women are working.
But we can all work longer.
We've actually perpetuated this myth that the NHS is somehow financially stable.
And how come no European country has got the crisis we've got? It's because part of their healthcare is based on private investment.
Well, it's insurance.
Exactly. And what's wrong with that? The problem is in this country.
They do have many European countries.
Even today, look, on the front of the Times here, shake-up of social care to lock out private firms. I mean, politicians seem terrified of introducing any private initiative into the NHS.
Stephen, that's a key problem, isn't it? I mean, when we talk about kicking the can down the road, just talking about more and more investment isn't necessarily a solution. That's 100%. Not tackling it head on. Do you think it's, I mean, speaking about those, the great and the good from July 1948, some of those are with us now. Surely there's time to adapt to what's been changing as well with,
100%,
with what's available in the private sector.
You can't expect the world to actually change the way you want it. You've got to change the way that the world is. But look, 15 years ago, we had the Dilnot Report. The Dilnot Report was the cross-party one about funding social care. And one of the things actually mentioned on Mike's point was when local authorities, councils used to run sheltered housing schemes, and they didn't actually make a profit out of it. They provided it locally. Now you've got one major Saudi Arabian company or finance company which owns 2/3 of the care homes in the country, and they're creaming millions out. It cannot be right that money, which should be spent locally on care. And look, you know, in my borough, there's one case we're spending £1 million a year on one child.
I mean that's a special child, presumably.
No, but it's these private equity firms where the profit all leaves the country that are now running these facilities that you could say absolutely they should be able to make profit, small local family businesses, of course. But the private equity firms have become a scourge on the system.
But can I also say that we have such a well-developed financial system in the world now that you can create money from investment. I mean, for instance, I know somebody... I know somebody... Excuse me, I know somebody who's been putting money into ISAs since the day ISAs were formed. That lady, who's now 82, has never touched them, and there's over £3 million in her ISA account, right? Because she's put it in every year. You can create wealth in the capitalist society, and millions of people, particularly in America, do that. So why can't we?
Well, Mike, I'd like to react to a comment we've had on gbnews.com/YourSafe from Chris P. He won't give his full surname. OK. Perhaps there's a good reason for that. He says, it's all right for Mike to say work until you're 70. He sits on his, shall I say, backside all day. Try doing a manual job, you selfish man. Please react to Chris P.
Of course I will. I knew from a young age I was not going to make... I was not going to make a bricklayer, OK? I knew that because my shoulders weren't broad enough. I knew I was not going to be a plumber. So what did I do? I decided to use what I have as an asset, my grey matter. So I will leave bricklaying, I will leave plumbing, and I will leave lorry driving to those who are suited to it, in the same way that kids should be offered that alternative at 16.
This is the point, isn't it, though, Stephen, that working until you're 70 is all well and good if you have a comfy sit-down, spin-in a chair job.
Well,
but for some people... Graft is graft.
100%, I mean, my son's an electrician, my daughter's a teacher, and I know which one is the more stressful job. But it's interesting, don't forget, when the Beveridge report came out about the beginning of the NHS, it's based on Keynes's assumption that by the middle of this century, coming up now, people would only work for 2 or 3 days a week.
No, we've been told that for years.
Because there would be less physical work and more mental work. I mean, the Labour Party's motto was the workers by hand and by brain. And so I can understand. I mean, bricklaying, I have to say, was a great loss to the trade when you decided not to become a brickie. But on the other hand, I think you're a great benefit to the nation by doing what you have.
That's very, very kind of you, Stephen. I mean, the point is, when I say work till 70, of course, you know, if your back's broken and all that, you can't. But 80% of jobs in this country now are in the service sector, OK? And if they're in the service sector, they're accountants, lawyers, or they're in investment, or, you know, languages or whatever, you can work till you're 70.
In care homes.
Exactly.
One thing I think we should be talking about is how we can reduce the cost of care. Of course, it's important to work out how we can fund what we need, but there are things that people can do to reduce the likelihood of needing care. Live healthily, lose weight, take exercise. And I think we don't want a nanny state, absolutely not. But on the other hand, we could reduce our care and NHS bills so much if people took more responsibility for their own health.
Integrated social care has to be... I don't often disagree with you, but I actually love the idea of a nanny state. When I talk to Jacob Rees-Mogg and he talks about his nanny, I would love to have a sort of Mary Poppins...
Nannies are for babies.
We all would. But the problem is...
So we want nannies, but not the nanny state.
The problem with what Miriam and yourself, Steve, just been discussing is that it's a long-term plan. It would take 20 years to teach people how to properly change their diet. It would take 20 years to properly teach people from the age of 16, pay £5 a week into a post office account to look after your future. And no Prime Minister, particularly as they change so often now, can possibly focus on a long-term solution.
Mike, there can be dramatic changes. I mean, Ozempic and Mounjaro, you know, the weight loss jabs, have only been on the market already.
I'm sorry, Stephen, Mike, I've got to interrupt because we're going to cross live now to the Prime Minister, Andy Burnham.
Never thought I'd hear that.
Right, we're just waiting for the sound.
I'm just looking around the room.
There he
I
is.
see a lot of faces who've been on this journey with me for a long time. Many of you, you know who you all are. You've probably got a feeling of deja vu, don't you? You've probably got that, but don't have that, because this time we're going to do it, right? We're going to do it. You don't take anything on without doing it, do you, Louise? So let's make sure we do. And lots of new faces as well. Fantastic to be with you all this morning. I was going to speak from notes, but for the reasons Louise just gave, you can't, can you? You can't speak from notes. I've just got to speak from the heart when it comes to this issue, because it is very, very personal for me right now and for my family. We've kind of lived it in the last few years from the inside, and the only thing you can do is talk from that. Why you can't do this job, in my view, without bringing all of that to it, and kind of then using that emotion, if you like, to kind of make the change and be brave in making that change. And that's what I intend to do, as I'm going to explain. There's lots I can say about what's wrong with the system. I will come to that. But I want to start with what's good about the system, because sometimes when we talk about social care, we don't do that enough, do we? And I see so much good in terms of the journey that we've been on. And I mean, I'm talking about the people who've cared for my dad. Hundreds of them we've seen and we've watched. You know, when someone in your family is receiving care, you look at everything through new eyes, don't you? You notice things that maybe you didn't notice before because you watch it so closely and so carefully. And I've just been really, I don't know, overwhelmed by their care, the skill in what they do, the professionalism. It really is incredible, and it's humbling to watch them caring for someone else's dad or someone else's mum. If you think about that, you know, bringing all of that to the care of someone else's relative, it's just an incredible thing, isn't it? That, to me, they should be the best paid people in society, not the worst. And, you know, I just start with that feeling. And I need to say this, because, you know, many people from other countries have been caring for my dad. I want those carers to know we appreciate you. We appreciate what you are doing to support people here. And that really matters that I say that as well. There is so much to be proud of. I mentioned the skill and the care and the professionalism. I watch sometimes how people communicate with my dad, and they're able to catch a moment of the old character. It kind of just will come out because of the way they draw in the conversation, and that is an amazing talent to have. But also moving from a wheelchair to an armchair, or from there to a bed without distress or discomfort, it is incredibly demanding and skillful what they do, and that needs to be recognised. I also want to recognise the good organisations, care organisations in all sectors. And as Louise said, we are really lucky to be in one today. I visited Jewish Care here in Enfield with the Member of Parliament, Sarah, 10 years ago. Just about. And I remember thinking, well, this is the gold standard. This is how it should be. And we're lucky to have a sister organisation in Manchester called The Fed, leader of Bury Council here today, chair of the LGA. He knows what I mean when I say that's whole person care, Eamon, isn't it? When you know it when you see it, and you see it there at The Fed, you see it here at Jewish Care. I see it at the faith-based charity who run my dad's care home. I see the same. I see good in all sectors. And let's celebrate the good in social care before we turn to the things that we know need to be better. And before we then say, and how have we got to this position? When it comes to the bad, I think there's only one group really to blame, and that's my generation of politicians. It's almost 30 years since the Royal Commission on Social Care. 30 years. And in that time, what did Yvette say? 22 reviews. I mean, it's a major dereliction of public duty that Parliament has not faced up to this, of all challenges, something so fundamental to life as this. It's shameful, to be honest, that politicians have put point scoring before fixing this issue. But that's what's happened. It's created a feeling in Westminster that this is too difficult, and if you take it on, you're taking on too big a political risk. Well, how can we have got to a position where it's too difficult to fix the basic care that we give to each other, that fellow human beings receive? I mean, how has Parliament got itself to that position? And there is something here that is a test for the political and the media culture in this country when it comes to this issue. How it's spoken about, how it's reported. It's for everybody. Everybody needs to take on board what is being launched today with this big conversation, because I think everybody needs to engage in it responsibly, needs to remember who they are talking about, what they are talking about, the people who work within it, and to do it respectfully and to do it accurately. I just think that's a really important starting point, and I feel I need to say that. Because the current situation, frankly, is bad for everybody. It's certainly bad for the people who don't get the care that they need. It's estimated today in England around 2 million adults have unmet care needs. Now, think about that for a moment and what that means. I can, again, certainly attest from family experience that it's too hard for the family carers, and the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, was quite right to talk about that on the radio this morning and say how important it is that we see people struggling in their homes looking after a partner or a relative. It can break people if they're kind of left without that support that they need. In fact, it does break people, and that needs to be recognised. It needs to be recognised that people can see everything they've worked for wiped out by the costs of care. Hundreds of thousands of pounds can just disappear paying for care. Adults with disabilities will say that they face very unfair care charges just to live their life. That needs to be recognised. And let me come back to the staff doing what they do on poverty pay. I've been made aware of somebody homeless working in a care setting, living out of a mobile home. Just again, think about that. How can we enable those staff to give a real sense of security to the people they're looking after if they do not have it in their own lives? And it makes what they do all the more remarkable that they do care in the way that they do. But we cannot take them for granted, and we must not do that. So it's bad for everybody in this, but it's also bad for the National Health Service. And let me just say something about that. Again, I've had experience in the system as it currently is, which is trying to give out care in 15-minute slots, because honestly, that's all that councils say that they can afford for many people. It's fine if the needs are moderate and you can complete the task within that time slot, but what if they're not? What if the needs become moderate or severe and you try and carry out everything within 15 minutes? I can tell you from experience that that can be a recipe for quite significant chaos if you are not careful. And it leaves the staff in a really difficult position, because often what they are told, if they have a problem and they can't complete what they're doing, ring 999. Ring 999. And I heard a few kind of yeses in the audience and a few nods. I know, and I'm saying this, there'll be people watching who know what I'm talking about. That can be a really frightening experience, because it often isn't the case that that person needs hospitalisation. In fact, you could say it's the worst place for them to end up. But once that process is underway, it's very difficult to stop the drag of the system into hospital and then everything that comes from that. That's bad for the NHS too and the staff who work there. It's a lose-lose situation, because often people then spend a long time in A&E, a long time in hospital, but then fit to be discharged and can't be discharged. It just is a pressure that the NHS struggles to meet. And look at it in the numbers. Today, or on the latest figures, about 6 million people, just there or thereabouts, over 65, are going to A&E every year. Now, some of those will be from social care settings. If you go back to 2010, it was about half, roughly 3 million. So you can see that change in that period. Last month, 13,600 people were deemed medically fit to be discharged, but couldn't be. That was in an average across the month in England. 3,000 people every single day receiving corridor care. Corridor care. The trade unions now are monitoring corridor care. Do you remember there was a time when that was what you called the winter pressures? Well, these are year-round now, and staff in the NHS are trying to deal with those pressures every single day. And there's growing talk of burnout amongst NHS staff because the pressure they are trying to deal with is simply too great. And it's not sustainable. If you think about all of those things, then you know the NHS cannot carry on in that position. And let's not have a conversation about social care as though it lives in its own silo. It doesn't live in its own silo. It's intrinsically linked to the National Health Service and what happens there. When I left office as Health Secretary, wasn't all my doing, but 98% of people there or thereabouts were going through A&E within 4 hours. If you look at that figure today, it's about 75%. And there is just no way that we can restore the NHS to the standards that we would all want to see without fixing this issue. We can't do it. So we need to face up to it with a new determination. We need to bring our best game to this and not the sort of stock in trade of Westminster, business as usual, and just finding a reason to score points rather than actually face up to what's involved here, given that it involves so many vulnerable people, so many underpaid staff, and so many under pressure people in our National Health Service. We need to bring the best of us to solving this issue because it affects all of us in one way or another. So that brings me then to what I want to announce today. 3 announcements, and you've already got a flavour of some of them, but this is what I've decided to do coming into office to bring things forward. And the first thing is to ask Baroness Casey Louise to bring forward her review by a year. So working with Yvette and with Angela and other colleagues, we want to expedite that review. We ideally want to do it even sooner, but we've got to be realistic. But if we say a year from now that we have that independent review, then I think we can rise to this challenge with the urgency it requires. So that's the first announcement. And let me also just say something about what I want that review to address. I go back to what we proposed in 2010, and Phil Hope was Minister at that time, a National Care Service. A National Care Service. Well, why do we talk about that? Because we need to talk about a system that can become highly integrated with the NHS. Social care is different. It has to be person-centred. If it's not person-centred, like the brilliant care provided here at Jewish Care, then it won't be what people would recognise as social care. You don't want to over-medicalise care, but it has to be very integrated with the rest of the system. It has to be preventative in its character. It has to be person-centred. And that's what we're asking Louise to give us her report on. How do we deliver a national care service in England that sits alongside the National Health Service, works in a similar way, that is highly integrated and can optimise the journey of a patient. If a patient's leaving home to hospital, back as quickly as possible, and there's no delay. We also then ask for a principle of home care wherever possible, so that we have an approach that supports people where they should be and often where they want to be, rather than ending up in a hospital bed. So how do we deliver a national care service? And there are different ways of doing it. You could do the fully fledged version, or you could do a lesser version. And you could do something in between, and then you have the question of how you pay for all of those options. But that's the stuff of the review, and the big conversation will feed that review. And again, I would ask everybody to engage with it in that way. The second announcement is to immediately, and not wait for the review, focus on the social care workforce. We already have a situation where the government has agreed a fair pay agreement for social care staff to come in financial year 2028-29, and that is a major step forward. And I pay tribute to Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, as was when that was brought forward. That is a massive building block of a national care service. And what I'm going to ask the ministerial group led by Yvette, Angela, and John Healy joining too, will be to look at how we turn the fair pay agreement into a bigger reform to improve the social care workforce, to lift it up, to lift it closer to NHS standards, in fact to integrate it more with the NHS workforce, and actually to start to think about progression routes for young people coming into social care, so they can progress from social care into NHS positions as well, and think about it as one workforce. We will not get the care service we all want until we improve the strength and the capability of care at the very front of the service. And that means lifting up the social care workforce as best we possibly can. Yes, in terms of pay, but also in terms of training and the wider support we give them, the security of their roles. And that is the commitment I'm giving today. That is an essential enabler of the reform that we wish to see. The third announcement is to start right now initiating cross-party talks on social care. And yes, I have been here before, and yes, I do have some of the scars of that, but it's the right thing to do. I stood on the steps of Downing Street just a few days ago, and I said I wanted to create a new way of doing politics in this country. More problem solving, less point scoring. And this is the first big test of that. And I mean what I say. We won't fix this through politics as usual. We have to bring a different approach. And I'm really pleased that today I've invited both of the main parties that have written to me to start those talks. And they will begin later today. And the thing is, if you know me and you know what I've said on this issue in the past, if you were to search what I've said about social care, you will see it all, and you will, well, some of you are writing stories about what I've said. And I stand by what I've said. But here's the point. Ed Davey was right about this morning. We're all going to have to give and take here, aren't we, if we're going to get to a solution? We're all going to have to listen to each other, something we don't do particularly well in politics. Actually engage and listen to other perspectives. We're going to have to find common ground here. If this is to be a lasting solution, it requires common ground to be found, and then ultimately you would hope a new social consensus can emerge about social care. So all of that is required if we are to get there, and that process starts today. It will run alongside the other streams of work that we are doing, but I will work closely with the other parties who want to be involved to have that conversation. But what I would say in closing is I'm not going to be deflected by the point scoring or the screaming headlines that comes out of that point scoring. That is what has set back social care. And I come back to this point about the political culture of this country and the media culture of this country. If we're trying to shut down the fact that you have a serious debate about an issue like this, if that's what that is trying to do, well, it's shame on all of us if we let that happen, if we say, well, I'm not brave enough then to go into that. But I'm just not going to kind of do that in my time in office. I'm making this a test of myself, whether I can bring forward a solution, and that is what I want to do. I would never forgive myself, ever. Who knows how long I will be in this position, but as long as I am, I will do my best to find a solution. And I would never forgive myself if I left without having tried, because of some of the headlines that will inevitably appear and some of the efforts that some people will make to create scare stories about the whole issue. Well, you can't create scare stories when people are already scared by what they're seeing anyway, through their own eyes, in their own homes or in care homes. You can't create scare stories for the staff when they're kind of living the life that they have to live. They kind of see it anyway. And, you know, you can have as many headlines as you like about this tax or something else, but when people are losing hundreds of thousands of pounds, everything they've worked for, well, what about them? And it seems that those stories don't really often think about the people who've already lost far, far more than that, indeed almost lost everything. So that's the way I'm coming at it, and no doubt more of those headlines will appear, but I'm just going to be really clear about this. I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to back Louise 100% in what she is doing and her review. I'm going to back Yvette, Angela and all of the ministerial team as we face up to this together. We're going to do it with strength. We're going to do it with resolution. I'm going to work and reach out with the other political parties, and that's not just a kind of passing statement today. That's a commitment that I'm making today. And why am I going to do it? Why am I going to do all of those things for my dad and the millions like him up and down the country? Thank you very much. So, I'm standing here on my own, going to take questions. I was hoping that the cavalry might... No, I'm only joking. Alison Holt I've got first from the BBC. Alison.
Prime Minister, we've had plenty of cross-party talks before. As you know all too well, what are you going to do differently this time, which will lead to a different result? And if I may, today's short notice talks, some have called them a show. Are they? And can you get meaningful change before the next election and more point scoring?
I think in terms of what will be different this time, Alison, if I look back to that experience that I had as Health Secretary in the 2005 to 2010 Parliament, we probably left the reform too late in that Parliament, and it got too close to a general election. And learning from that, that's why I'm bringing forward, one of the reasons why I'm bringing forward Louise's review, because I think it's better to do it sooner and further away from an election. And that answers another story for the media, doesn't it? That there's no election on the horizon. I think it's best to deal with it early and to listen, because often what we can do is then drop a solution out late. Engage now. Don't have cross-party talks when a solution is emerging, again, which is what we did back then. Build it with people. So do it now. Get people in now and start talking, understanding the different perspectives. I don't know whether it's possible to find agreement, but let's give it a try. You mentioned late notice. Well, I had two approaches at the weekend. I had a letter from the Leader of the Opposition and from the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Would I engage? And so, well, I said yes, you know, so I don't think it's... When I've been asked, I was only responding to that ask. But I'm glad that we will have those talks today with the Shadow Health Secretary and the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. But it's just the start. And no, it's not for show. How could it be, given what I've said this morning? This is huge for me. I know that this will require me to put what political capital I have on the table, and it could be it could sort of wear down that political capital in some ways, but I'm prepared to do it. I'm prepared to do it because this has gone on too long. The risks of failing to act are too great. Thank you. Rebecca Barry from ITV. Probably should keep this with me, shouldn't I?
ITV News has revealed some shocking failures in social care. You saw that in our report that was broadcast just last night. Can the government realistically transform social care without raising taxes?
Well, I would start by saying this is a question of standards within organisations, and we're in one today that meets the highest standards, and we praise Lord Levy and all of the team here, but we also know that care is variable across different organisations. There's good in all sectors, I said that at the start, but there's profiteering in this sector as well, and there is unnecessary and dangerous cost-cutting at times on the backs of vulnerable people, and that is fundamentally unacceptable, and I'm pleased that ITV has exposed some of that poor practice in recent days. Is it possible? I think more is possible from within existing resources, and the things that I've talked about today, particularly around the workforce, will be fully funded. So let me just be clear about that. I think it is possible from existing budgets to do much more. I mentioned that whole thing of people coming into hospital unnecessarily from social care settings, then having a long length of stay in hospital as a result of that unnecessary admission, and then a long period where they're medically fit to leave but can't because the care is not available. Now, that very last bit has been, I think it's been estimated, that costs the NHS around £2.5 billion a year. But if you add all of it up, you are talking several £1 billion a year is lost from the lack of a preventative front-end social care service that's well supported. So I think we owe it to the public, before we talk about tax rises, and I know Louise will help us with this, you first have to look the public in the eye and say, are we doing everything we can do from within what we've got? And I don't think we can say that, because we've taken a different approach to funding local government than we have to the NHS. But the effect of that has been just to pile pressure on the NHS, and we haven't got the incentives right between the two. So I think, firstly, you have to do more with what you've got. But I think Louise indicated some of what we would want to do in the fullest sense will require difficult decisions. But we will be honest with people about those. We will put them before the country at the right time, and we will hopefully proceed with people's consent. Next one, sorry. It's Sam Coates, looking right in.
Sam Coates, Sky News. I was hoping to get your instinct on a couple of areas of the social care debate. Do you think that you can only get funded care if you've got assets of less than £23,250? Do you think that figure is now too low? And do you think the fact that 85% of care homes run on a for-profit basis, do you think that figure is too high? And I hope people in the room don't think that this is crass, but it's a linked topic that is linked in the minds of the public. What's your position on assisted dying?
OK. 23,500, I think, is the threshold. So just so everyone watching knows, if people are, whatever you've got, home, pension, savings, can be whittled right down to that floor. And that's why I talked before about hundreds of thousands of pounds being on the table, you know, on the roulette table when people go into later life, and who knows what can happen to any of us. I think social care in England is as unfair as American healthcare. The vulnerable pay with everything, and it can completely leave them with nothing. And, you know, that floor has been in place for a long, long time, and common sense says it can't be fair. Obviously, the Dilnot report looked at that, at those issues, but we're 10 or more years on from Dilnot now. So, you know, those issues will have to be looked at. But it's not the case that the funding and the paying for social care is the only issue. As I've said before, there's a whole other set of issues here that have to be considered. I think the review should look at practice across the system and where the best care is to be found. I'm not saying today that you know, one sector is too big and therefore it will need to change, but we do have to be sure that there isn't profiteering in the system. I think that is where we absolutely draw the line. There are good organisations in all sectors, but what we cannot accept is money being taken out. And we actually do see that happening, not just in adult social care, we see it in children's social care too. And I think we do need to kind of make some changes there to answer the question that I was answering before about making the most of the money that we've got. And then let me come to your third point, Sam, my position on assisted dying. I take the view that that debate, and I don't say that there shouldn't be a debate at some point about those issues. Personally, I think there's something that needs to happen first, and that's the fixing of the funding of palliative care and social care. I think it is very challenging to introduce that wider debate in a context of people not receiving that care and having the peace of mind about that care. And that's the way I kind of see this, and that's the position that I will stick to. Daniel next from The Telegraph.
Hello, Prime Minister. When you did your big conversation back in 2010, you came out very strongly in favour of compulsory insurance. Is that still what you're minded to bring in? You also ruled out tax rises. Is that something you can rule out now? And can I just ask another question on defence? Can you commit to 3% on defence by 2030?
Oh my goodness, that's getting your money's worth there, Daniel. So, I mean, I'd said before that I have views that are on the record, but life has moved on from when I was first looking at social care in 2010. We are in a difficult world from a financial point of view. And I would come back to what I said a moment ago. I can feel whatever I want to feel, but if I want to persuade others and get a cross-party consensus, you don't just go in and say it's got to be my way and that's it, because how do you persuade people? I think there are kind of ways of looking at this that could include a more voluntary approach initially, or could include a roadmap to a reformed social care system. To come back to the tax point, I will stick to the manifesto. That is important. There is a manifesto, there are commitments there on tax, and I will stick to those commitments. When it comes to defence, obviously those commitments too relate to the Parliament after this one. In terms of our NATO commitments, I have been very clear that we will honour those commitments. It does mean being prepared to look at challenging issues. There is that challenge about young people not in education, employment or training. I've shown a willingness this week to face up to some of those issues and start looking about how we move to a situation when we're investing in people's success rather than paying for failure. I think as a country at the moment we're doing the latter. We're paying for failure, and we're paying quite a lot actually for failure. I've talked about the cost of that to the NHS in terms of failing to fund social care at the front end, but I think that's also true of young people. We don't have an education system that supports young people who want technical qualifications. We don't do enough to support young people with special educational needs and disabilities through the school system. Kids with mental health challenges wait for months, even years, to access that treatment. You know, then young people are going on to benefits in their 20s. It's the same argument. We've got to start investing in success and helping people succeed rather than paying for failure. And if we change those things, then we will open up the way of meeting our commitments on defence. Millie from The Independent.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Millie Cook from The Independent. Can you guarantee that people will no longer have to sell their homes to pay for care? And as you've acknowledged, you and others have tried to reform social care before. Looking back, what do you believe that you got wrong, and how should voters trust that this time will be different?
In an ideal world, I wouldn't want anybody to have to sell their home to pay for care. I think it's a really awful process for those who live through it. You know, the whole thing of children taking power of attorney and then dealing with parents' finances. I think the whole thing is horrendous for those who live through it, and they see everything that their parents have worked for just whittled away in front of them, paying for care that often isn't good enough care in terms of what you would want for your mum and dad. So I think the system isn't right, and in an ideal world, no, I wouldn't want to see that. If I go back to what Daniel mentioned and the proposals I put forward, it was intended to stop that. You know, if everybody on the NHS principle contributed a little, it would mean everyone could protect the majority of what they'd worked for. Now, I don't know. I know the Mail probably in the Telegraph doesn't support that, but I don't know. What do people support that? And this is the point. What I got wrong, as I said before, was going too close to a general election when there just wasn't time for those issues to breathe. And I do ask colleagues in the media again, can we not let the country look at this in a quite clear-eyed way without all of the hype and the sort of the overwriting of some of these issues? On this issue, I just ask it again, on this issue, please, can we have a factual debate? Can we allow people to weigh up the different options that Louise might put forward and then just come to a considered view based on those facts? Is that too much to ask? I don't think it should be too much to ask, because I think the public will give us their view. They'll make it really clear what they feel they can accept and what they can't. But we won't get to that point if there's all of this stuff swirling around and everyone frightened about everything. That just won't get us there. So we're all in this together. But yeah, I learned from that experience last time. I'm initiating cross-party talks today rather than a few weeks before a general election. So you live and you learn as a politician. But I hope that applies to everybody too. Let's do it better this time, and it does apply to everybody. And I think, have I got anyone else to call? I'm just looking to, bear with me. Oh, sorry, Chris. Yeah, I see other hands, and I don't know if we're going into a wider Q&A, unfortunately.
Thank you. You mentioned that one of the reasons why the previous 22 efforts had failed is that people were scared about headlines about tax. Is one of the aims of this national conversation to explain to people what they stand to gain by reforming the current system and therefore make them more willing to consider those trade-offs in terms of how you pay for it? And you mentioned several different problems there. There's catastrophic costs that people face to have to sell their homes. There's eligibility through means tests and other criterion that means people get their help. And then there's the quality of care, which is provided by low-paid workforce reliant on immigration. Those are different challenges. So which of those do you prioritise?
Well, we look at them all in the round, is what we do, because I think one of the failures, again, going back to what we got wrong in the past, has been just to look at one element of social care. Often, how do we pay for it, and how does it affect the individual? Those are important issues, but it's not the whole story. You do have to look at the situation of staff trying to provide it, the pressure on the NHS that results. You have to look at it all in the round, because actually some of the financial solutions may come from doing things differently and unlocking the unproductive spending that we have in other parts of the system. The issue is whether the big conversation will be allowed to open up these issues. That's why I was looking to Louise to see whether she wanted to come back up and just say something on this. The big conversation would be the place where those options could be put out there and people could give their view on their options. It's an independent process, so it's safe in some ways from government coming in and saying what can and can't be said. But Louise, it's over to you.
Yeah, I think it's just really important at this stage that we don't overmanage with kind of letting, dare I say it, media decide what questions we should be talking about with the British public. So my view is we need to involve the public in what they think care is, what they want to do themselves as families, what they think is reasonable, what they think they need help with. It's as simple as that. Some of those things can be really small, and yet as a system we make them really difficult, through to then who they think they are prepared to support and who they think their taxes or any other form of personal money should support. And we go through the gamut of all the options. I think it's fair to say that there has never been a national care service. There are colleagues in the room today that are doing the best thing they can to manage a pretty flawed system. Nobody at any point before this moment said we want to have a national care service, and so we need to look at everything in your list. But the most important thing is we have to involve the public in actually helping us shape what that looks like, and I think that's the most important part of today. And I'm not avoiding your question, I'm just telling you the truth. Prime Minister, I'm afraid I'm being looked at by your staff, which I have to say I still find frightening after 27 years.
You find something frightening?
No,
I don't believe it.
I pretend I do anyway. But so I think
everybody.
The point now, if it's okay, is if anybody would like a quick chat with Andy, he's really happy to. But we need to just get up and get moving because we've got cross-party talk. Sorry, Andy. Had to do
Well, Andy Burnham there making his social care announcement, ending with a hug with Dame Louise Casey. And joining us back in the studio is journalist and broadcaster Mike Parry and the former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Stephen, what did you make of what you've just heard?
It was impressive. He was very much comfortable. He was comfortable in his own skin there. But he's actually made the single most important point. You cannot possibly hope to actually improve social care unless it's done on a cross-party basis. So he's actually taken away the biggest argument that the Tories can have against him. Now, I think it's a pretty skillful piece of work, and I wish him well.
Mike, very briefly.
Well, he's been impressive, but to me, this is a subject which everybody almost agrees with. Something's got to change. But it's the economy stupid that he's got to deal with, you know? Not this alone. Once you get onto the economy, then you're going to find all the big questions are going to involve tax, and that's what people care about.
Miriam, there are a couple of points there. He made what might be described as almost quite easy comments, saying that social care in England is worse than healthcare in America. This is blatantly untrue, for example. I mean, health outcomes in the United States, clearly much better than they are, but loads more to dive in with what he's been discussing.
Absolutely. He's asking the right questions, but the controversy will come when he tries to find the answers, I'm sure.
Well, it's 11 a.m. on Wednesday, the 29th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Breaking news this morning, new Prime Minister Andy Burnham sets out his social care reforms, but will he need to raise taxes to fund his plans?
This will require me to put what political capital I have on the table, and it could sort of wear down that political capital in some ways, but I'm prepared to do it.
Well, the new Prime Minister announced a national care service alongside the NHS, with a focus on increasing the workforce through higher wages.
For me, they should be the best paid people in society, not the worst.
And the Prime Minister will initiate cross-party talks in hope to strengthen the sector.
Elsewhere today, with some breaking news and exclusive from Mark White, people smugglers have launched a full frontal assault across a wide stretch of the French coast, which has pushed at least 700 migrants into the English Channel.
And a continued heatwave risk. Wildfires are surging across the UK, France and Spain, with more scorching weather on the way today.
And yet you won't apologise because you're blaming Nigel Farage for amplifying it.
I think we also need to talk about a double standard.
No, you keep taking the conversation on.
Now, the Green Party leader, Zach Polanski, there admitting a mistake for sharing a guillotine image of Nigel Farage, but he's refused to say sorry.
And an HMO takeover. Residents in Nottingham have told GB News they're worried about the number of houses of multiple occupation in their area.
Community has changed so much. It's unrecognisable.
There's got to be something where you can only have so many in a certain distance.
There is not a need in 100 yards for 6 HMOs.
So, Charlie, we've just heard that lengthy press conference from the new Prime Minister, the Health Secretary and Dame Louise Casey, who is conducting a social care review. Lots of interesting questions asked by the Prime Minister. He made the point that parties who try to do social care reform just before an election tend to fall flat on their face. That has certainly happened. it is the right time to be answering these questions. But what are the answers going to be? That's when he's going to run into difficulty, I think.
Yeah, he's given that impressive statement by himself, no lectern, speaking, as he said, from the heart. These are emotional issues. I think many people might be moved by the fact that he is more engaging, more empathetic than Sir Keir Starmer. But once you cut past that and the shine and polish on Andy Burnham, what are the proposals? Will they actually work? When you get into the focus beyond the politics and the communication style, that's when the real answers will come. And he's been accused of making a show with this gathering, this cross-party gathering today. Very short notice. Sorry, Davey joining by Zoom. Conservatives sending a junior minister, aren't they, as well? So, yeah, lots to dive into here. GBNews.com/your say. Very keen on your perspectives and all of that.
But before we dive into those things, we've got the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you at 3 minutes past 11. The top story this hour, Andy Burnham is putting social care at the centre of his first days in number 10. Promising to take on a crisis he says successive governments have failed to solve. The Prime Minister says Westminster has ducked the issue for too long, leaving families paying the price and the NHS under huge pressure. He's asked Baroness Louise Casey to speed up her review, promised reforms to improve pay and training for care workers, and invited the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats to cross-party talks. Speaking at a care home in London this morning, Mr Burnham said it's shameful that politicians have failed for decades to fix the crisis.
Initiating cross-party talks today rather than a few weeks before a general election. So you live and you learn as a politician, but I hope that applies to everybody too. Let's do it better this time.
In other news this morning, the Football Association said it is deeply concerned about the lack of process and governance around FIFA's plans to set up a private company to run its competitions. FIFA wants to create a new body together, bringing commercial rights and the running of tournaments with private investors able to take part. UEFA has already condemned the plan, saying the soul and governance of football are not assets to trade. Andy Burnham, a lifelong Everton supporter, says football belongs to fans and that selling any part of the World Cup means selling out. People smugglers have launched a major surge across the French coast this morning, pushing at least 700 migrants towards the English Channel. At least 10 boats have been launched since the early hours from Dunkirk in the north to Dieppe, around 100 miles further south. More than 300 migrants have already reached UK waters, with at least 400 others still in French waters attempting to cross. A maritime security source told GB News the gangs are using surge tactics to stretch French patrols. If all those attempting to cross today reach UK waters, the number of migrants arriving since Andy Burnham entered number 10 would rise to more than 1,600. Well, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp joined us this morning from France and said that the scale of the crossings today show the immigration system is totally broken.
Andy Burnham's claim yesterday this problem has been solved is clearly ridiculous. The reduced numbers are simply down to the weather. The sea in the Channel has been quite choppy so far this year. The only thing protecting our borders is essentially the wave height in the English Channel. It is not Shavana Mahmood's deal. And as you can see from the evidence surrounding me right now, Andy Burnham's claim this problem has been solved is complete nonsense.
Chris Philp there speaking to us this morning. The UK is on wildfire alert after more than 200 fires were recorded in just 12 days. Fire chiefs say the hot, dry weather has left parks and fields at risk of catching fire. The warning comes during the fourth heatwave of the year so far, with amber heat health alerts in place for much of England. The Met Office says any fires that break out in parts of London, the south east and eastern England could become exceptionally severe. People are being urged to take extra care, avoid disposable barbecues, take litter home and call 999 immediately if they see signs of fire. And more than 33 million illegal cigarettes have been seized from local shops and high streets in a major crackdown on illicit tobacco. Trading Standards says the illegal trade is often run through shops and vape stores by organised criminal gangs. Penalties worth £3.5 million have been issued since stronger powers were introduced. But officials warn that's still only a fraction of the nearly £2 billion a year that illicit tobacco takes away from public services. Those are the 11 o'clock headlines. More news shortly. Now, though, let's get back to Britain's newsroom.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
And the Prime Minister has just finished giving a speech on social care reforms where he pledged to put everything he has got into fixing adult social care.
Yes, Andy Burnham announced the creation of the National Care Service to sit alongside the NHS. He's vowed to strengthen the workforce through increased pay and training. And the new Prime Minister also urged politicians from across the political spectrum to work together to improve the sector.
However, when pressed on whether taxes would need to rise to fund the reforms, he avoided giving a direct answer. He's left further questions there over how the plans would be paid for. And that is the key question, isn't it, Miriam? How are we going to pay for these plans? I was interested in Andy Burnham's comments, speaking off the cuff, but almost seemed to be political sweeteners, easy things to say that actually don't amount to much, saying social care workers should be some of the best paid people in society. It almost sounded a little bit like an meme you might have heard once upon a time saying pay nurses, footballers' wages, that level of political insight. It's all well and good to say that sort of stuff, but we need to drive down into the detail. It was good, wasn't it, though, that he took his first press conference for the first time?
He's answering questions, finally, from journalists, yet to be back in Parliament. It is an emotive issue. It's good to see someone speak with empathy and experience, but he's going to struggle when he comes into contact with the cold, hard facts, because it's a very difficult problem to solve. I mean, social care, most people, the vast majority of people, will not need expensive social care throughout their lives. I think the average total lifetime spend on someone is about £20,000. Well, that's £1,000 a year in old age. That's not a huge amount of money. But some people, a few people, 1 in 7, 1 in 8, need £200,000 of care. So it is a classic problem for insurance to solve, but very difficult for the state to solve it.
Well, let's speak now to our political editor. That is, of course, Christopher Hope, who joins us live. Chris, good to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much for joining us after that press conference. What did you make of what Andy Burnham had to say there?
Well, he spoke without notes, he spoke with passion, he spoke about the scale of the problem. 65-year-olds, 6 million over 65-year-olds going to A&E now. He says that's double the figure in 2010 when he was the Health Secretary. He said it's just simply not acceptable that we have so many old people in A&E and we don't have them in a care service. He talked with passion, I thought. He's laying it on the line here in terms, this is his ambition to resolve the care crisis as he sees it. He said there'll be a big conversation of people conducted by Louise Casey, Baroness Casey, reporting back next April, and after that some form of reforms. But let's get a flavour of the passion the Prime Minister gave this issue.
I'm making this a test of myself, whether I can bring forward a solution, and that is what I want to do. I would never forgive myself, ever. Who knows how long I will be in this position, but as long as I am, I will do my best to find a solution. And I would never forgive myself if I left without having tried, because of some of the headlines that will inevitably appear and some of the efforts that some people will make to create scare stories about the whole issue. Well, you can't create scare stories when people are already scared by what they're seeing anyway, through their own eyes, in their own homes or in care homes.
OK, you can see there our Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. He's speaking there to care workers, to other people here. He gets the problem with care. His father, of course, has Alzheimer's in a care home now, he says. His father doesn't know he's Prime Minister. That's the scale of the issues they're facing him there, of course. But he said he's going to get this conversation happening now. He's appealing for cross-party talks. He goes from this building to meet with Stuart Andrew, who's the Shadow Health Secretary for the Tories, and also talk down the line to Ed Davey, who's caring for his son on a holiday, we think, in France. That's to bring together, he wants to bring together all parties to find a solution. Now, he said he wants to do this a long way away from a general election, so he's reporting back in April from this big conversation, and after that, some proposals. That says to me, by the way, for those who care about elections, no general election until late next year. That's the first time we've given an idea of timing of that. that. He was also questioned by a journalist about the sister's suicide. He says there he doesn't want to see that legalised until we have agreed palliative care standards, social care standards across the UK. That is kicking that issue of assisted dying into the long grass. He was also drawn on taxation. The report today in one newspaper saying he may slap 1.25% on income tax to pay for social care. He says again he will stick by the manifesto pledges not to increase income tax, VAT or national insurance for employees. That matters because now that's closed off an avenue of paying for what he's proposing. What he's proposing, a national care service, will cost billions and billions of pounds, and we'll see how that plays out in coming months and years. I should say, by the way, I asked for a question at GB News. He chose not to call me for a question. We'll keep asking, of course, as we do.
Chris, thanks for that. Andy Burnham, very confident performance. Lots of our viewers will be pleased that the government is finally looking into this. But there are lots of tricky questions to answer about it being funded. What did he have to say about the possibility of people being asked to use their housing wealth to pay for care? Because that is something that has, well, brought down political parties in the past.
Yeah, he said that was wrong. He doesn't want that to happen. People shouldn't have to pay for their care through their homes. He says that. He's saying everything he can. He's been in Prime Minister for 9 days now, Miriam. He can say what he likes, of course, because this is the maximum moment of maximum political power. Events will start to eke into that power, not least the 700 small boat migrants crossing to the UK from northern France today. We couldn't about that either. That's not what else to talk about. But he says he doesn't want people to lose their homes. There's a threshold below which the state will take no more money from you. 23,500, he says. He doesn't want that to be whittled down anymore. He's against people losing their homes. The question, though, is how will people pay for their care? It can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in the most extreme cases. It's deeply worrying for so many viewers and listeners of GB News. Frankly, everyone hopes he can find a way through this, but it will cost money, and will that be acceptable?
Christopher Hope, thank you very much for that report. A shame you didn't get that question, but we know you're not shy, so perhaps with Mr Burnham being behind you, go and shout that question to him about those 700 crossing right now. Our audience want it, and I know you've got it ready. Speak to you soon. Top man. Cheers, Chopper. Right, let's speak now to the Executive Chairman of the National Care Association, Nadra Ahmed, CBE. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can I just ask quickly, what do you make about what Andy Burnham has said about expediting the KC review, which is meant to return in 2028, now next year?
Well, I think Baroness Casey herself had said that she could come in earlier, and that was when she was giving evidence to the Social Care Committee. So I think that was not it was not unexpected that they would do that. And I think Stephen, before he left the office as the Minister for Care, also had indicated that it needs to be coming in earlier. So I think that's right. And I don't think it was a huge surprise to many people. The fact that they've chosen to launch that big conversation today, I think that is also was expected. Some of the contents, I mean, it was a very confident performance. It was something that he has really put his reputation on the line about. Every word that he spoke was really very, very passionately spoken about social care. So I think we have here, I mean, my question to myself as I was listening to some of it was, having been in the sector for 45 years, you know, am I watching that at last, that transformation of the value of social care? The proof is always in the pudding. Words are cheap. We have to wait and see what comes out.
And Nadra, of course, money is one problem. There's not enough of it in the system. But workforce is also an issue. For some years now, we've been hearing of shortages in the sector. I think there's around a 7% vacancy rate right now. Even if the money were to be found tomorrow, it's not the case that we've got people ready and willing to take those jobs. What other reforms would be needed to improve the state of the workforce?
Well, I think that's an amazing question, to be absolutely honest. You know, the reason that we have had to go down the route of international recruitment, which is far more expensive, it isn't the preferred option. We really do need that domestic option in place. And why do people not choose social care as a career of choice? The answer is in the question, because they don't see it as a career. And here we have him talking about it being valued in the way that we have been calling for it to be valued. It's highly skilled, delivering healthcare tasks. So it needs that professional recognition, but it also needs the value of the pay. And if that can be resolved in some way, whether that's through the Fair Pay Agreement and funded properly, then we as providers need to be able to deliver that as well. Young people are not seeing it as a career of choice. It's very, very skilled. It's highly skilled when you're dealing with people who have dementia, you're looking after people who are at the end of life. All of these things used to always happen in the NHS. They're now happening in social care. The acuity levels of the people we support have changed dramatically, and yet no funding has followed that. It's remained within the NHS.
And Nigel, can I just ask, with regards to creating this into more of a career, as you just mentioned, there's no getting away from the fact that the health and social care visa was abused widely and was relied upon by many care sector companies. Do you think there's an opportunity now to change the status of working in the care sector, to reduce our reliance on foreign workers in this area, perhaps improve the standards and improve the pay by creating a new generation of homegrown carers?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. It was abused, the visa, but it wasn't abused because that's what we wanted. We genuinely needed the workforce at 160,000 workforce. It was abused because the Home Office didn't heed our warnings and make sure that those visas were actually very tightly controlled. So we saw that recruitment really get out of hand. So to go on to answer your question, I absolutely agree. We do need to have a workforce that is from within the UK, people who may not have thought about social care as a career of choice. We need to be encouraging them. And some of that will be to do with the pay. We know the cost of living crisis. We know people have got to pay their mortgages and, all of that, bringing up children. It's not cheap anymore. So we do know that it does need that. But it also needs that professionalisation status so that we don't have to rely on an international workforce. And let's be honest, both health and social care have always relied on some element of an international workforce, and that you can get that when you walk into hospital right now. They are excluded from any of the challenges that the social care sector has.
Naja Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Workforce challenges are absolutely enormous, Charlie. We were talking to Dan Archer, who runs a care agency, earlier on. I remember him telling me some time ago that it's worth paying your care staff more because then you don't have to keep retraining people every time they leave. And actually, it's a false economy to keep wages.
You can rely on
them.
Better trained, fewer colleagues could be the way. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Look, it's 11:20 now. That means it's time for the Great British Giveaway. We're giving away £60,000 in tax-free cash and a gold bar worth over £5,000. Here are all the details you need.
It's the Great British Giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash that can make your bank account brilliant. And because it's tax-free, you get to keep every single penny. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. You could give that to your children, your grandchildren, or just invest it for the future. What would you do with it? Just make sure you don't miss your chance to win £60,000 cash and a fine gold bar. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, good luck, folks. Right, up next here on Britain's Newsroom, a rural cricket club has had a bit of a media storm because a fielder, watch this, was caught clicking his fingers to mimic a batter's nick. We're calling him Clicky Ponting, Miriam.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Not being a cricket fan, it all sounds rather bizarre to me, but obviously a big scandal.
Nothing else has captured my mind more in the last 24 hours in this story. I've been talking about it relentlessly. It is a shambles. It is we'll go through it very shortly with Stephen Pound and Mike Parry, who I'm sure have very strong views about Clicky Ponting. This is Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News. See you both very shortly.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply. Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're now joined again by... What's so funny?
Mike Parry just snapped there. He realised he was on his phone as he came back.
Oh, well.
So,
Ça change. We do have our panel in the studio, journalist and broadcaster Mike Parry. He's on his phone. Our former Labour MP, Stephen Pound.
The well-behaved Stephen
The well-behaved, yes.
Phone in his pocket, folks.
I did once accuse one of our panellists of their phone going off live on air, but it turned out to be Andrew Pearce.
It's happened before, it'll happen again.
But I said I'd take the hit.
Yeah, it's very good of you. Very honourable. Where are we starting then, Miriam?
To call them taking the hit, I believe we're starting on cricket. That's about all I know about cricket, so take it away.
OK, so Mike, there has been this remarkable cricket cheating scandal.
It's a fantastic story. We're not talking high-level cricket. We're talking North Yorkshire and South Durham League, right? And we're talking about a chap who's 38, so that's quite old for a cricketer, and his name is Brian Devine. And the allegation is that Brian, who's a fielder behind the wicket...
In the slips.
In the slips, thank you. Clicks his fingers when a ball whizzes past the batsman, and the batsman's bat is quite close, right? Yeah. And what happens is he fools the umpire into thinking that the click of the finger is, in fact, the ball nicking the bat. Do you see what I mean?
What surprised me about this was that he's not Australian. Because, you remember Steve Smith, we used to sing, he's got the sandpaper in his hand, he's got the sandpaper. But, of course, in some ways, we invented cheating. Probably the greatest ever cheat in the entire history of world cricket was W.G. Grace, who his bowled first ball on one match at the Oval. He just put the bails back on the wicket, said to the umpire, "Windy today, George," and put it back. And there's that famous time when Courtright bowled him, first plumb LBW, and so Grace stared at the umpire, nodded, then caught behind, again, stared at him. Third time, two of the stumps go flying out of the ground. As Grace goes away, Courtright says, "Leaving us so soon, Doctor? There's still one stump standing." So we've done...
If I had any idea what you're talking about, I'd be amazed.
But this is great, because it's local cricket, isn't it? And you know how much your local cricket club means to you in the summer, because, of course, during the winter, the cricket pitch is deserted and the bar is deserted. It all lights up in the summer and people love it. But it caused a huge problem.
It has.
Because we don't know how long it's been going on.
Yeah, and people have been looking through the club and this slip fielder in particular, looking at the catching record.
Yes.
He is a major outlier. He is a major outlier, which is quite interesting. And what I found particularly funny...
As in he's better than everybody else?
Yes, obviously, because he's cheating, allegedly. What I found particularly funny about loads of cricket journalists, obviously, there's a bit of a lull at the moment. There's not much cricket going on elsewhere, and they've all pounced on this story. I saw one journalist posting yesterday on X saying, shockingly, this club has yet to produce a statement at 3 p.m. And it's like a village cricket in the Northern League. Exactly. But they meant it entirely sincerely.
Where's their comms team?
Yeah, exactly.
When will it be raised in Parliament? You know,
Parliament should be recalled.
I had the pleasure for years of working with Geoffrey Boycott, OK? Sir
That was
Geoffrey
a pleasure.
Boycott. Yeah, absolutely it was. And, of course, you never find a man more fastidious about the rules of cricket, right? So I'd love to know what Sir Geoffrey might think about this, as it's his part of the world, North Yorkshire, because it has become a major scandal within the cricketing world.
OK, you two, I've been asked to highlight this as an ongoing investigation. No one's been found guilty of any wrongdoing yet.
Absolutely.
But this is the sort of scandal that will capture much of the nation's attention. Perhaps not Miriam Case.
We're
going to move on before you give another lengthy anecdote about cricket. OK, what do you want to talk about now, Miriam?
Well, there's this story in The Sun, War on Lawfare. 2 top ex-generals issue call to arms to stop Labour betraying our veterans. Of course, this is about the ongoing Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, which has caused so much controversy.
This is not just Labour. This goes actually back to the last Conservative government. Look, the reality of the situation is when we're talking particularly about Bloody Sunday, when unarmed people running away were shot in the back by British soldiers.
Is this alleged?
No, that's a fact. That is a fact. Unarmed people were shot in the back by British soldiers.
But the reasons why those shots were fired is debated to this day, because it depends which side you look at.
There was never any evidence of these people in the bogside in Derry on that day being... But
who started firing first?
The army.
Well, we don't know that. I'm sorry, there are allegations in some of the inquiries...
Let's not revisit Bloody Sunday and have their sole argument again. The more important discussion now is what's... Sorry, Stephen. The more important discussion now is what's right and wrong for the law to do now. And we've had the Good Friday Agreement. Is it right and proper that different people involved in that conflict should be held to a higher standard, Mike?
No, I think everybody should be held to the same standard. And some of our veterans have been pursued for 30 or 40 years, which I think is a disgrace, whereas other people in the Good Friday deal who were guilty... of horrendous crimes, who were guilty of horrendous crimes, there's no dispute about that, were suddenly walking the streets again in the communities where they had committed those crimes. That, to me, is a misbalance.
Mike, the reality is, a number of people I know in the forces are actually pretty much disgusted by some of the activities on both sides. There should have been a court-martial at the time. What is wrong is to actually revisit this 30 or 40 years later.
Right.
And so the problem is, because they call it the legacy, and it is still a very toxic issue in Northern Ireland. So I think what we have to do is to say that Good Friday Agreement in 1995, that should have actually ended it. There should have been treatment at the time. There wasn't. Let's not pursue people when they're in their 80s.
I mean, Mike, do you think this will have an impact on our ability to conduct delicate operations today? Because soldiers joining the forces or currently employed in these roles will think, am I going to have this sort of inquisition 40 years later myself?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, already in certain police forces, we see officers reluctant now to sign up to the armed police squads, right, to be sharpshooters for the same reason. But undoubtedly, if you are an expert sniper in the SAS, in the British Army, you must now worry that
Mike,
it could come back on you in years to come.
Mike,
and all you're doing is serving your country.
Let's talk about Afghanistan, whether it's made a difference. In Afghanistan, it was the soldiers within those serials who were actually talking about their friends.
OK.
And it was dealt with at the time. That's the answer.
Gents, thank you very much. I think what's interesting about this, Charlie, is that former senior armed forces personnel are getting involved in politics. They're so worried about this.
I wish more of them do it when they're in the service rather than former. But there we go, it is what it is. Well, let's discuss more of this later, but first, Sam Francis is here with a 60-second news update.
Thank you both. Very good afternoon, or good morning to you, rather. The top story at 11:30. Andy Burnham has promised to put everything he's got into fixing adult social care, with plans for a new national care service and reforms to strengthen the care workforce. Speaking this morning, the Prime Minister accused Westminster of point scoring before fixing a crisis affecting families, carers and the NHS.
It's a major dereliction of public duty that Parliament has not faced up to this, of all challenges, something so fundamental to life as this.
The Football Association says it is deeply concerned about FIFA's plans to set up a private company to run its competitions. It follows criticism from Andy Burnham, who said football does not belong to investors and warned the World Cup was never anyone's to sell. The UK is on wildfire alert after more than 200 fires were recorded in just 12 days. The warning comes during the fourth heatwave of the year so far, with amber heat health alerts in place for parts of England. And Zach Polanski has refused to apologise after he shared a social media post which Reform UK claimed was inciting the murder of its leader, Nigel Farage. In an interview, the leader of the Green Party admitted he made a mistake, but said an apology would be false. He's now taken down that post. Those are the latest headlines this hour. A full roundup at midday.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Coming up at noon, we have Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. They're here now in the studio. What's coming up on your show?
Well, who exactly are we allowing into this country through this small boat crisis? We're going to show some footage of an arrest of an illegal migrant from South Sudan in Greater Manchester. His name, Both Duke Deng, 21 years old, apparently has family back in South Sudan, turned up at a school armed with a 7-inch knife, a can of petrol, a hatchet. I believe there was one other thing he had on him. Acting completely erratically. Arrested, and I think he had failed his asylum claim about 3 times.
But of course he'd been given housing paid for by the British taxpayer. He broke into the country illegally. We provided him food and board, and then he turns up at a school attempting to carry out an atrocity.
We saw recently Greater Manchester Police having to make a rearrest of a Sudanese criminal who was an asylum claimant, we believe, as well, who had escaped lawful custody while being transferred to a hospital. So getting a bit of run of these, aren't they, at the moment? This is clearly a major issue in Greater Manchester.
Well, it's this Manchesterism that we hear so much about from Andy Burnham. What's Andy Burnham going to do about this issue? I mean, yesterday he said a few words when he was forced to answer on it. Nothing of note.
But he was saying that the problem is being sorted, basically, that numbers are down. The problem is that last week we saw high 800s of people come across, right? That was Andy Burnham's first week, and that was much higher than the week before, which was Keir Starmer's last week. Today, alone in the English Channel, 700 migrants currently in the English Channel. Most of them will likely make it across. It's likely that today alone we'll have almost as many people come into this country as came for the entirety of last week.
Wow.
This is an accelerating crisis now, and Andy Burnham is using statistics saying, well, this year, on the whole, it's lower than last year, which, correct, is true as things stand. But let's not forget that in 2022, at this point, we had roughly the same number of arrivals as we do this year. The vast majority of arrivals came through August and September and then October.
Things can change. Can't they?
Things can change very quickly. Tom and Emily, thank you very much. We'll see you very shortly. But first, up next here on Britain's Newsroom, linking into that discussion they'll be having, you can't miss this exclusive report from Jack Carson about people in Nottingham living in fear over the explosion of HMOs in their village.
You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A very hot day to come across southeastern England before it does cool down through the rest of this week. Rain across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland as well through this afternoon. That's thanks to this cold front. They'll be bringing persistent rain and a much fresher feel to parts of northern Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland as well. Quite a lot of cloud as well ahead of that front across parts of northern England, West Wales, southwest England too. There should still be some sunshine as we look towards East Wales, parts of the Midlands, central areas of England through much of this afternoon. It will feel very hot in the sunshine across eastern areas of England. Temperatures climbing to the mid-30s, peaking at 35 degrees across central London, but in the 30s quite widely across this area, so a very hot day indeed. Across the north, though, it's going to be much cooler than that, with temperatures just in the mid to high teens. So much fresher feel and quite a wet feel too, as that rain pushes into more eastern and central areas of Scotland, down towards northwestern areas of England as well through the early part of this evening. So a bit of rain possible across parts of Wales too, mainly just showery rain. As this weather front sinks southwards through this evening, it will tend to fade away, which means we'll see very little rain push further south than Scotland overnight. But there will be more cloud pushing in across parts of Wales, central areas of England. Clearer skies for a time across much of Scotland, particularly in the east, so it will turn quite fresh overnight here. But then the winds pick up across the west and some heavy showers will push in thanks to a renewed area of low pressure. Meanwhile, it stays very mild overnight in the south and east, and it will be another quite warm day on Thursday. Particularly to start the day, the cloud does push in, and that's a cold front, so it will introduce cooler air into the afternoon. So a fresher feel to come, still quite warm, but temperatures in the high 20s, so a bit of a difference to those mid-30s, and even cooler than that further north. Bye-bye.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 12. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Charlie and Miriam.
Now, residents in an area of Nottingham have been voicing their concerns over the number of HMOs being developed in their area.
Yes, locals are worried about safety, parking and losing family housing. Our national reporter Jack Carson has the story.
Areas like this can end up like HMO Britain. It's not fair.
It's a much talked about problem, but for this area of Nottingham, it's a reality. In the last 12 months, countless houses of multiple occupancy have been developed in Netherfield because development rights allow houses to become small HMOs without planning permission. It's meant this area has become a hotspot, with accommodation for 6 or 7 people being built in a community full of families.
As you can see, that they piled all the rubble up outside, and it's unimaginable how much rubble there is that's come out of one house.
Heinz and Marilyn Haverkamp have lived on Chandos Street for 52 years, but an HMO being built next door has damaged their property and left them fearful in their own home.
The dust and the damage that they're causing, we've got cracked ceilings everywhere.
We've got water all at the bottom of the stairs, water on the ceiling in the back kitchen. I suffer with my lungs. I've had to have 2 emergency helps. The dust, it was unbelievable.
Now we're concerned about the community. It's changed so much. It's unrecognisable.
How does it make you feel?
Really sad. I'm frightened.
Residents have lived on the street for an average of 26 years, with the community made up of multiple generations. Whether it's concerns about safety, parking or bins, there's anger at what's happening.
Where they're taking all these houses away, families could actually be in them instead of single people paying a rent which is extortionate.
Surely there's got to be something where you can only have so many in a certain distance. There's 3 there. Surely that can't be right.
For me, it's ruining our community. That yes, there's a need for housing, but there is not a need in 100 yards for 6 HMOs.
When one resident contacted the leader of Gedling Borough Council, voicing their concerns, Councillor John Clark blamed clamour in the media and politicians promoting fear. The local council is consulting on an Article 4 direction, which would require planning permission for an HMO development, but enforcement will only come 12 months after it's issued. Local independent councillor Russell Whiting says he's frustrated at the lack of power to stop them now.
And the fact that it can happen with no oversight from the council, with no say from residents, without even councillors like myself being able to have a say in most cases, is incredibly frustrating because there's no accountability and there's no democratic oversight of these things.
A Gedling Borough Council spokesperson told GB News the council is monitoring the number of HMOs in individual wards across the borough. National planning guidance sets out that the use of Article 4 directions to remove national permitted development rights should be limited to situations where a direction is necessary to protect local amenity or the well-being of the area and apply to the smallest geographical area possible. The developments here keep coming, but residents are determined to fight on for their community. Jack Carson, GB News, Netherfield.
Well, thank you very much, Jack Carson, for that excellent report. Very important, most timely after the Burnham HMO Britain comments. And I would say, any of you watching, if your local area is facing a similar experience, do get in touch, gbnews.com/your say, and you might prefer to email. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk. That's a great way to get in touch, share some details, and perhaps you might chase that up. It'd be great to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, HMOs used to be associated with students, didn't they, near universities, caused their own problems, I'm sure, but completely different to people who are just not connected to the community at all.
And perhaps it's linked to this next story we'll be doing next, because people smugglers have launched a so-called full frontal assault across a broad stretch of the French coast that's pushed at least 700 migrants out into the English Channel, hundreds already in British waters.
Yes, that's coming up next on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The heat wave that's leading to some exceptional temperatures and wildfires across parts of France and Spain, Portugal at the moment, that is continuing, but we're seeing the peak of the heat across France today, and then some of that hot air is pushing further eastwards. For Spain, Portugal, however, the hot weather continues into tomorrow. Further east and for Italy, even towards parts of Greece, temperatures in the high 30s, low 40s, with plenty of sunshine to come as we head into the weekend. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's talk now to showbiz journalist Nelson Aspen and former US House Advisor Lee Cohen about this conversation. Good evening, gentlemen. Nelson, let me start with you. What has Oprah been criticised for here? Because a lot of people have taken a shot at her watching this. interaction.
That's right. Oprah is worth well over $3 billion. She does not need to present a retrospective of her greatest moments, but she is obviously desperate to stay relevant. And in this 1.5 hour special, the Harry and Meghan interview comes in at about 15 minutes. And it was obvious that she needs to backpedal. It is obvious that it was the greatest softball display of favoritism in broadcast history, almost.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Temperatures are set to soar again next week as heat health alerts remain in place across large parts of England. So my favourite meteorologist to talk to ever in life is John Ketley. John, good to see you. Looking very suntanned and gorgeous, it has to be said, in matching pink. John, we've got another heat wave on the way.
Surprise, surprise.
Hey, it's summer.
Yeah, it seems to have been a very prolonged summer this year, didn't it? Obviously, it started early. We started with that very hot weather in May, which is unusual. And then we had further hot weather during June and again in July as well. So it seems a little bit different this year. It's been going on for so long. It's almost as if we've been really, the tentacles of Europe have been extending across the UK, and we've turned into a continental regime, really.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's just a fact of life. You know, I'm of the generation, my grandfathers and great uncles all fought in World War II, but my children, you know, that's not a memory for them. They never met anyone who was in the Holocaust, and we have short memories. We're the TikTok generation. We have, you know, 5 seconds worth of attention we put on anything. So I think it's a good step. UNESCO's had some scandals in the past, or at least they've chosen to recognize things that perhaps I don't think are all that significant, but the D-Day beaches I visited myself a few years back, they're very well preserved, by the way, so I'm not sure how much this adds in terms of resources or what it can really do to increase young people's knowledge of history, but it can't be a bad thing, can it?
I mean, it's an amazing story all around, and it's a story that deserves to be told over and over and over again.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 11 minutes to 12 on Wednesday, the 29th of July. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Now, breaking news, Andy Burnham has... no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're talking about something else. We're talking about people smugglers. And they've launched a wave of coordinated small boat launches from multiple points along the French coast this morning. Let's speak to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who can tell us all about it. Mark, what can you reveal today?
Well, remember last week, of course, a few people were having a laugh describing small boats arriving over a number of days as Andy's Armada. But I guess today you could actually think that is more appropriate. GB News has counted at least 10 migrant dinghies that have been launched into the English Channel. You're looking at images there of a beach which is all the way down the French coast towards Normandy and the Somme. These migrants going off down that pebbly beach to catch their taxi boat. And then just a short time later, they're on that vessel, on that taxi boat, very happy with themselves indeed as they're making their way towards the UK. You can see the engine of that boat as they make the V for Victory sign heading towards UK waters. It's a taxi boat, so it's not fully full at that point. It's picking up more migrants as it goes along. And of course, as I say, that one of multiple boats, we can tell you at this time that now some 400 migrants have arrived at the border processing facility at Dover Harbour. At least another 300 are still in French waters. So 4 migrant boats all the way down the coast heading towards the UK as we speak. It has been a busy old time for the lifeboats and Border Force vessels as they've been shuttling to and from these boats as they entered UK waters. And it gives an indication of the fact that although migrant numbers are down year on year, that is true. We've had a lot of windy weather, some other factors like increased patrols in the north that have forced the people smugglers to shift their tactics, but we know they've been going much further south. And then today, this tactic of a huge surge, an effort to overwhelm the police resources down a more than 100-mile stretch of coastline, and it's clearly worked. 10 boats made it into the water, 10 boats, 6 of them here, another 4 still to arrive.
Mark White, thank you so much for that report. Another record about to be broken, Charlie. Not a good one.
What record is that?
Well, I think we're going to get record numbers of small boat migrants crossing the next few weeks, possibly.
You reckon?
Given that the seas seem to be flattening out now, and that seems to be the only defence against record crossings. We'll see. Will the 165 people on one boat record be broken? That's a possibility.
I think that is a realistic possibility because of the adaptation in tactics. So, yeah,
Indeed.
Highly likely, I think. Right, then, that's us from Britain's Newsroom. We'll be back again tomorrow, but it's time now for Tom and Ellie for Good Afternoon Britain.
Well, there you go, a surge in small boat crossings once again with this calm weather. But who exactly is on those boats? We're going to show you shocking footage of a South Sudanese illegal migrant who turned up at a school in Greater Manchester with a hatchet, a can of petrol, a machete and other weapons. Shocking.
Elsewhere, Andy Burnham wants to spend perhaps tens of billions of pounds, but where's he going to find the money? All that and more after your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's a bit more rain to come across northern parts today, whilst further south the dry and hot weather continues with temperatures in the southeast higher than yesterday. Let's first though talk about the rain across northern areas. A band of rain, not especially heavy this morning, but could pep up into something but more persistent, running across Northern Ireland into central parts of Scotland. And there are a few outbreaks of rain across other northern areas too, and here it's quite cloudy. More sunshine there across central southern parts of England in particular, and in the southeast, like I said, markedly hotter than yesterday. Highs of around 35 Celsius. Could be the 7th day this year where somewhere in the UK exceeds 35. Into the evening, and it's generally dry across northern parts of Scotland. A few outbreaks of rain here and there, maybe even some glimmers of sunshine, but generally quite cloudy. Wetter across central and eastern areas. A band of rain which could be a bit heavy at times continues through the evening and the start of the night. Northern Ireland will see most of the rain having cleared through, so a drier end to the day here. And across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a fine end to the day as well. The clearer skies towards the southeast. A lot of the rain across Scotland will clear away as we go overnight, but there is some further rain set to come in from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Outbreaks of rain mainly across western parts of Scotland, a bit further south as well. Fresher air in the north means temperatures here could drop to single figures in some prone spots, but further south it's another warm night to come. Temperatures holding up in mid to high teens Celsius. More showery rain across northern parts in particular through tomorrow. Some of this turning heavy, even thundery, especially across northern parts of Scotland through the day. Watch out for some higher rainfall totals building up here. Further south, apart from a few showers perhaps around some southern coastal parts, it is going to be dry but not as hot